Hello, everyone. This is Jerry. First, we had COVID season, then we had riot season. Now we have COVID season again, which makes me wonder exactly when riot season will start up again. I just love it when crooked, power-hungry politicians screw with our lives. The mainstream media is quite pleased to tell us about the increase in coronavirus cases, but seems to be quite silent about the declining death toll, while, of course, downplaying the role that the recent protests have played in said spike. As you can see in this first image, some people are wearing masks and some aren't. But as you can see, there's no social distancing. Most of the protesters in the next image are wearing masks, but you also have a few people that are not, in a very large crowd that is very closely packed together. And pretty much the same can be said about the next image as well. So again, you have multiple people in large crowds packed closely together, with some not wearing masks. But it gets even better because apparently there are studies, supposedly, that assure us that the protests have nothing to do whatsoever with the increase in cases. Don't get me wrong, I strongly support peaceful protests. And as you can see from my recent videos, I'm strongly against police brutality. But is it really so much to ask for the so-called law to be applied equally to all citizens? From a First Amendment standpoint, what's the difference between protesting the death of George Floyd and protesting the unconstitutional coronavirus lockdown orders implemented by these wannabe dictator governors like Newsom in my state of California, who shut down wineries while conveniently leaving his own open? From a scientific standpoint, what's the difference between these two different kinds of protests? Does the coronavirus see the anti-police brutality protest and just go, dang it, I was going to infect those people, but I can't because Black Lives Matter? Unless, of course, they're killed by other black people or by abortion. This hypocrisy and doublethink really demonstrates how statists will support whatever rights and freedoms are convenient for whatever narrative they're pushing at the moment. If you protest against the lockdowns, then all the leftists will read about how the anti-lockdown protesters want to doom Granny to die to go get haircuts, while completely ignoring how Governors Cuomo of New York, Murphy of New Jersey, Whitmer of Michigan, Newsom of California, and Wolf of Pennsylvania murdered thousands of people by putting COVID-19 patients in nursing homes while knowing full well that this illness disproportionately affects the elderly. It's almost like they wanted to have an unofficial death panel. But instead of mentioning that, they'd rather just talk about Orange Man being bad, which I'm sure has nothing whatsoever to do with this being an election year and the Democrats not having any other ideas, because that strategy worked oh so well in 2016. Though, as Texas Governor Greg Abbott's recent coronavirus lockdown orders indicate, the Republicans probably won't be our political saviors either. If anything, it may indicate that the saying of conservatives being progressives that drive the speed limit, at least in this case, might actually be true given the right circumstances. It's possible this might also apply to Trump as well, because while he thankfully hasn't implemented a national lockdown, he is for the most part letting these governors do whatever they want. Constitution be damned. Some Trump supporters are using the fourth D chess excuse they use for almost any stupid thing he says or does, or claiming that it's part of his interpretation of the 10th Amendment, but I personally think the Democrats, he's just trying to play it safe because it's an election year. Trump might do a bit more if he gets reelected, which is fairly likely, but people are having their rights violated now and have been for quite some time. It's going to take more than just him making a few statements and telling us to liberate the states to make me trust him on this. I find it very interesting how the very same people who are strongly in favor of the first round of lockdowns are blaming Trump and those of us against the lockdown orders for the second round of lockdown orders, because if you just would have done what they said, we would be reopening. While blatantly ignoring the nearly endless historical evidence that proves that if you give politicians nearly unlimited amounts of unchecked power out of fear, that they're not going to easily give up said power. Sure, Europe's reopening now, but who's to say that there won't be another round of lockdowns sometime in the future? Many of these abuses of powers that we today see in government date all the way back to the Woodrow Wilson administration. He was president during World War I, and while we saw a continuation of this unconstitutional expansion of power, under FDR and almost every other president after him, including Trump. So Trump is not political Jesus, in other words. And neither was Obama, neither was Clinton. These orders are just that, orders by executive decree. No laws were passed that I'm aware of, and these governors, though they dialed back on this a bit for a little while, are ramping it up again as the cases spike again. These governors are going to continue to play this game for as long as people let them, and people will let them for as long as they're willing to trade liberty for the illusion of security. You pro-lockdown people that are blaming us need to realize that if we all just would have refused to buy into the blatant lies we're being fed from the beginning and just said no, then we wouldn't be seeing this second round of lockdowns, and we wouldn't have what nobody's willing to admit is an economic depression, perhaps even the second Great Depression. I'm not saying precautions shouldn't be taken, as I understand there are certain people that are vulnerable to this illness, but if these same governors would have taken steps geared toward those segments of the population and left everyone else alone, then perhaps we wouldn't be having this conversation. Now, before I end this video, just in case YouTube deletes this video or anything happens to this channel, you might want to check out my BitChute account linked in the description.